Is now streaming live on custom live streaming service.
All right. All right. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So we have an individual here that is, I don't know how to explain her. I mean, she's definitely a boss, and she went through a lot of different things in her life. And I would say the key word to describe her is nutrition, 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 nutrition. But I like to give whoever I'm actually talking to a particular nickname. So her nickname is going to be the Gymaholic boss, and I got that from one of her posts on social media, and it was this big ass word that says Gymaholic, and I was just kind of like, you know what? That defines her in a nutshell. But ideally, I want you to tell the audience a little bit more about you, Laura, and what would you like to talk about today?
Well, Jim, that's an interesting. I don't think everyone's ever said that about me, but hey, I will take it. I think gymaholic isn't a bad thing because we want to stay active and fit for life, right? So today I feel like discussing the life aspect of nutrition, right? We can't expect to do something once and have it stick with anything really in life. But I think a lot of the issues with nutrition and fitness is that we want it now, we want it fast, and we want it hurry. And that's not how I roll. That's how I used to roll. That's not how I roll now and haven't for almost 14 years now. And the benefits I've seen are insane. To be able to do something sustainable is the way to go.
So, I mean, obviously, with that, I like to do my due diligence and dig into the history of whoever I'm interviewing. And for you, like, obviously, like nutrition is a key factor to what you're doing, but there's also a softer side to you. So, I want to kind of start with that and then build into it. So, you worked for 10, almost 11 years with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta in the cardiology department. So, I want you to kind of talk about like, how did you get into that? How does that kind of work with what you're doing right now? And why did you pick to do with kids of all things?
Well, it's funny. So I actually kind of fell into children's in a way. So I lived in Philadelphia where I did my dietetic internship, and my boyfriend, now husband at the time, was moving to Atlanta, and I was in Philly. And I said, well, hey, if I get a job, I'll move down. So I applied for a bunch of places, and children's ended up hiring me. I started in the GI outpatient, and then the cardiac department hired me on. And funny enough, though, yeah, I've been there for 10 years, children's entirely for about 14.
Hmm.
And I love it, but it's not just the children I'm working with. I'm also working with their parents, right? They are the rulers of the roost. I mean, 5-year-olds aren't going to the grocery store. So it was an ability to be able to impact not just the adults that I'm used to working with, but also their young ones. And how are they going to, create a more sustainable path of health and fitness for them as they get older? So what I do with the cardiac kids mostly is the preventive side. So we have kids who have high cholesterol, hypertension, and then other host of cardiac diseases and disease states that still require proper nutrition. But I'm trying to prevent like the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and up year olds to live a healthier life instead of fall into, the trap of eating too much and not moving.
So, I mean, with that, I think one of your favorite quotes was, "There is no greater harm than that of wasted time." So, the
That's right.
being that you're dealing with these kids, right? Do
Yeah.
you think that you're getting a jump on that time? Because I mean, obviously, most people don't realize that they need to eat healthy or work out until they're like middle age and shit starts failing and they start getting all these different diseases. So, are you kind of trying to jump the line by getting in front of the kids and giving their parents that insight beforehand?
That is quite honestly the best way to look at it. I don't know that everybody sees it that way. It's funny, kids are depending on the age, kids are they're intuitive, but they don't fully understand the context. Like they're so ingrained in what they're doing. They're very, for lack of better terms, like they're selfish, but they should be. Like they don't know the grandiose world out there. And it's hard for them to see the future and care that much about it. So they're focusing on the now. The parents have to focus on the prevention. And so that time aspect of it, they don't see the benefit of the healthy lifestyle now. They just know that they want Doritos right now, and they
Mm.
don't know why they can't have them or whatever their parents deciding. So I think, with that in mind, with kids who have a really hard time understanding that concept, I try to put it this way. I say, there are a lot of kids out there that are going to grow up and have some unhealthy behaviors,
Mhm,
and you get the benefit of starting now. And I
mhm,
know that may not fully resonate right now, but know that you're getting a jump start and you're going to be ahead of the game. And so everything you're doing now is going to keep paying off years and years.
mhm.
And because they sometimes they feel like if you have high cholesterol, you don't know you have high cholesterol, you have a blood test. You don't feel it, you can't understand it. And so I try to come at some aspect of like, no, you're like you're better. You're doing everything better now, and you're going to be way, way, way ahead of the game for some kids. And some resonate with that, some don't. But I try to make it realistic.
Well, I think you definitely make it realistic, but at the same time, I think you're a kid at heart, right? I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
based upon the research I've done, I would say Halloween is probably one of your favorite holidays because it seems like you dress up for every single one as far back as I can remember, right? I mean, you dressed up as a dead French maid, you dressed up as Kourtney Kardashian. I mean, you've done a lot of different things. So is that something that you utilize when you were in that environment, or is that something that you more so try to get the adults to understand how could they still be kids by understanding by working out and eating right can make them live that life even longer?
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. I mean, if I have a good party to go to and I have a theme, I am all in. I was Slash one year as well with my best friend. She was Axl Rose. It was great. But yeah, so the problem, well, even coming into the holidays in general, there's so much stigma around eating and drinking and partying, and there's your schedule's off and you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't have the can'ts and the shouldn'ts and the oh, I feel bad and I don't want to and I really need to do this and all this negativity around food and eating and movement in the next couple of months. It's getting colder outside pretty much everywhere, and I think Halloween is just the kickoff.
Mm,
Halloween's the kickoff, and one of the things that I have been putting out in social media is that you can set your own rules and boundaries, but you don't have to like completely restrict yourself from anything that you love. It's not it's not about the one candy bar you have a day. And like a fun size candy bar, who cares? But if we're eating like 10 or 12 a day, then maybe we have a conversation about that because there's with anything, too much of anything is not necessarily good.
mm,
And but finding that balance of like why you feel like you need to have it, why do you feel like you can't have it, where can we find that balance, like where is that story being played in your head, and what are you teaching your kids then too?
mm,
If you're doing as much as you can to get all the candy out of the house to make it a bad thing, your kids are noticing that and they're understanding that, oh, candy is bad, I'm not allowed to have this candy. Or when they see it, they're like, oh, I better have it and hide it and hoard it because they're not sure when they're going to get candy again. But if you just like don't care because it's cool.
mm.
We're gonna have candy here, we'll have candy there, and like take the stigma off food and for every holiday, then people tend to grow up with a lot less anxiety around it.
So, I mean, I think that's a good philosophy, and ending that statement with that key term. I want you to kind of talk about something else that I've seen in one of your videos, and it's something that I think that usually maybe in the Western culture we deal with more often than not, is the all or nothing diet, right? So I want you to kind of talk about that. I mean, obviously you're hella fit. You went through your weight loss, you went through all these different things. And I think one of the things that you said that really resonated with me was that you figured out what worked for you and you stuck to that versus jumping into all these other random diets that you see on television. So I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, and just a little back. So, yeah, I grew up a pretty overweight kid and started my first diet right before high school. I crash dieted about 15, 20 pounds just before high school. And it was just like a nonstop back and forth forever because I want like what everyone wants. Everyone wants everything now. You want weight loss now. You want the results now. You want to look younger now. You want all these things now. And what I grew up understanding is that I although I'm no different and I want those things now, the reality is that you can have them now, but they won't last. And you have to keep repeating, repeating, repeating. And it's so exhausting. And I feel like, the all or nothing diet is really the only two choices we have. It seems like it's like you're either on a diet or you're off a diet. But I don't really feel like that is not only does it not work long term, but it's completely ridiculous.
Mhm,
You can't expect yourself to do something so drastic and so hard for a long period of time. And then if you do that and you get the weight off, well, what are you going to do after? What have
mhm,
you learned? You can't sustain, anyone can do anything for a month, couple months, even that 75 hard, sure. What happens after? No one's ever thinking about the after fact. No one's thinking about, well, a year from now, 2 years from now, am I going to be doing 2-a-days every day for the rest of my life? No, you're not. Can you do it for the short term? Sure. What's that putting? What kind of stress is that on your body? Like what kind of time commitment are you keeping towards that? What are you giving up? What else are you negating out of your life just to be able to work out twice a day, every day for the rest of your life? And for what? So
Mhm.
you can fit into a size whatever? Cool. But what if you just did something a little bit different with your diet, which is the main reason why anyone gains or loses weight?
Mhm.
Working out is one thing, but your diet is everything. That's what you have what, 15, 16 hours of the day to make food decisions. You're making like 200 plus food decisions a day. That's a
Mhm.
lot of decisions to make. So make them easy, make them sustainable, make them fun, and you're more likely to stick with them.
Mhm. So, I mean, obviously, it kind of goes back to the key word we talked about earlier about nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. So, you had an opportunity to co-author, I think it was chapter 44 of the cardio disease of, I think it was a nutrition handbook for
Yeah.
pediatrics. So, I want you to kind of talk about that because, I mean, obviously, in that case, you were authoring about kids, but in that cardio disease space, and again, we're talking about working out versus food or cuisine. How much of what you talked about in that particular chapter then relates to adults?
All of it, honestly. I mean, aside from like the nuances of, kids need different nutrient amounts than adults, it's really all the same stuff, truly. It's about some most of that is like that chapter in particular was a little more technical and had a lot to do with some of the feeding programs and things we do for the infants who have cardiovascular disease like uh, more intricate heart functionality disease states. But when it comes to the prevention part, making sure you're getting enough vitamin D and you're getting enough fiber and you're eating a balanced meal and you're getting proteins and whole grains. And I mean, it's all this literally the most boring stuff out there about nutrition. I feel like sometimes I should be called like the most boring dietitian in the world because I don't want anyone to think these extremes, these exaggerations of life for something you want to achieve and then keep.
Mhm.
And so that along with everything else, if you aren't going to do it 6 months out, why are you doing it now?
Mhm.
What is it going to serve you? How are you going to learn? And then, some people need to go hard and fast. Okay. If you're going to go hard and fast, though, what's the backup plan?
Mhm.
You got to have a backup plan because you can't do it forever.
Mhm.
You just can't.
I think, I mean, obviously earlier on you was talking about, and we spoke about like reaching to the parents or the adults of the kids through the kids. And even with that particular chapter, I mean, a damn toddler or a 7-year-old is not going to read that chapter. Like, so again, it's essentially for the adults. So I want you to kind of talk about what you said. I mean, a well diet, like what is that? I mean, obviously we've seen the charts in the classrooms for the kids, but we don't see those charts in the actual break rooms for corporate offices. So in today's world, is the 200 calories still something that people should follow, or should they follow what works for their body?
That is great. I mean, the complexities of eating come down to your calories and calories out when it comes to weight management, right? And the balance that I talk about is taking foods for their particular value. So when we think about nutrition, I'll nerd out a little bit. So we think about nutrition, we have calories, which is the core base of like a pyramid of nutrition. Calories in, calories out is how you gain or lose weight. Bottom line, there it is. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. However, our calories are made up of different macronutrients. We have proteins, we have carbohydrates, and we have fats. And most of our foods are made up of a combination of most of those. And my goal is to totally simplify that. So I believe in if you can find a source of protein. So usually protein comes from some dairy products, some meat, fish. There are some plant-based products out there as well, or plants in general that have more protein than others, like beans. That would be your protein source. And then you want to think of a produce. So your fruit or your vegetable. Don't care what kind. You could have both of them, doesn't really matter. And then the third thing you have to add in is your carbohydrate source.
Mhm.
So yes, I talked about protein, carbs, and fats, but fats are in a lot of those foods. So I don't feel like we have to worry too much about the fat content or like adding in a fat, because if you're focusing on generally nutritious foods like leaner meats that have a little bit less fat, maybe sometimes you have higher fat, no big deal. Your plant-based foods might have some fats attached to them, like an avocado is a generally a fat, more like a fruit, but it has fat. And then your carbohydrates, a lot of them have fat in there, no matter what you're looking at. So, or you're adding it to anyways. So to sum it up, it's protein, produce, carb, or I call it hashtag PPC. If every single one of your meals can start out that way and you think that way, you start with the protein. What source of protein am I going to have? Then you add in your produce, fruit or vegetable, because those are the two that are typically the most cumbersome to find. Like they're not just hanging out in the middle of the grocery store. You have to go search for them, cook them, chop them up, whatever. They're not just readily available all the time. And then carb, because that's easy. Who cares? And if you really want to get into it, then you focus on portion.
Mhm. So I think we've established you being the thought leader in nutrition. So like let's flip this a little bit, right? So again, obviously this is the entrepreneurial podcast. So we've established who you are. I want you to kind of talk to the entrepreneurs because I would think the dietary supplements of an entrepreneur may be a little bit different than the standard person based upon the high energy level or the high intellectual level that they have to produce over and over again, day after day after day, and dealing with stress. So what kind of things would you shift to kind of help manage that with an entrepreneur?
The stress in an entrepreneur, as far as nutrition goes, well, I
Yeah.
feel like, that's where I think some of my three key pillars of nutrition in my business are awareness, habit stacking, and a curious mindset. Stress comes from all areas, your work, your family, your friends, whatever. You have stress coming at you in all places, but you have a lot of choice over whether or not you're going to allow the foods you eat to cause you more stress.
Mm.
And yes, the tricky thing is we have to eat. So there is no getting around it. But if you can start to choose foods and identify that awareness of like, okay, this food makes me feel good, or this food does not make me feel good. So I'm going to reduce eating that. And it could be like pizza makes me feel good mentally, but afterwards, I don't feel so good physically. You get to decide where you're going to draw the line at that. Maybe it's you have a slice instead of five. Maybe you add a produce source to that so that you're getting some fiber and you're able to feel fuller, and that's going to make you feel better. Because if you're feeling better physically, you're going to feel better mentally. You're going to feel like you can attack a job or a business meeting or something of that effect. Because if you're feeling physically bad, that's going to affect your mental capacity, and that's going to affect anything else you're going to do on the outside of that.
Mhm.
If it's a workout or whatever. But you don't want to be bogged down by things that you have total control over. So if you can be aware of what's making you feel a certain way and then create those habits around it, you understand that pizza tastes good, you like it, you want it, you just maybe can't eat the amount of slices you used to or you would like to eat. So you want to keep it normal and sustainable, a part of your lifestyle. Cool. And then you keep making that a habit. And then you keep asking yourself the question, like, is this working for me? Is this making me feel good for the long term? Are there things I can do better? Do I need to change something else in my diet or my daily routine that's going to help me adjust to this food choice that I'm making? That curiosity, I think, is key, because we're not asking ourselves enough questions. We're just making ourselves feel bad by not following the rules that are arbitrary out there. And making ourselves feel because we're not doing the most. Like, you're doing fine. Just ask yourself some questions. What can I do better to be better next time?
Mm. So on that last sentence about, what can you do better to be better the next time? I want you to time travel back, and I want you to think about you as like a 5, 6 year old. And again, we both grew up in New York, right? You grew up in Syracuse. I want you to kind of talk about like New York, or no matter if you're upstate New York or if you're New York City, New York is a different state of mind. So I want you to kind of talk about like what kind of environment. Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial household? Did you grow up in like there's farms out there as well in upstate New York? Like what environment did you grow up in? And kind of I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, so sort of entrepreneur household. So I grew up in the city of Syracuse. I went to Catholic school as a youngin. I went to a Catholic school when I was in middle school, and then I went to public school. But growing up, my dad, he dabbled in a lot of things. He owned his own bar for a long time. It was not highly successful. Then he ventured into doing all kinds of things. He was selling, um, like he'd put up kiosks of these Disney trinkets of things. I don't even know what that business was. He struggled in that line of work, and so he was always doing something. And when he wasn't doing something, I could tell he would always feel a little like not good about himself. Not, he wasn't providing. He wasn't doing what he wanted to do. But yeah, I think, and I never really thought that I had that entrepreneurial spirit, but my other side of the family lives in Norway, because my dad was Norwegian. He's no longer with us, but he and all of my family out there, they're all entrepreneurs. My cousin owns a honey making business. He also owns a beer distillery. He a brewery. He also my other cousin he owned a paper mill plant.
Wow.
I mean, they're just doing the big things out there. So it's been in my family. I just don't think I ever realized it as much until like 5 years ago. I really just dove right in. Yeah.
So I think obviously through osmosis, right? I mean, obviously, I think you grew up in that environment, but you were not thinking about it. And because I mean, the position that you're in, there's different stages to it, right? I mean, you could
Mhm.
obviously work for an agency and be kind of like going back to, being a gym rat in a sense, and you're helping people train with nutrition and working out, but you took the alternative to that. I mean, obviously you have your own business, you're not stuck underneath an umbrella of another corporation. So you had to make that a conscious decision. Again, you can correct me if I'm right or wrong.
No, yeah. I mean, funny. So I currently still work for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. However, they just nicked my job, believe it
Mm,
or not, which is a blessing and a curse, because I feel like I wish I could have been at the place that I said, no, I'm good, I can just step out.
mm,
But they are transitioning it to a contract position. And I'm so curious to see, like, why are we devaluing this service? Why haven't we up leveled it? I mean, I've asked for years and years and years to up level it. But I'm so thankful that I was able to start my business when I did, because now I'm just going to do this a whole lot bigger and better than I did before. And it's giving me that freedom to do so. And, you know, I'm almost nervous for the institution that I was working for, because I don't know that they know what's coming.
mm, mm.
I do a lot of work with these kids, and um, you know, they're a great institution. I'm not dogging children's in general. I just don't know, they never had a conversation with me about what I do and how I could do it better, and or what they could do to service me to help do better. There's never a conversation about it. And so we'll see what happens. But I'm excited because I'm moving on, moving up.
Well, I would think for you, they did you a hell of a favor. I mean, obviously having that on your resume and having the articulation to deal with kids that are going through things that most parents can't handle, it gives you a dossier, a portfolio that you can take that to any other hospital without dealing with any non-competes because you were working for them before. So what they've done is they freed you up to actually build an empire to do what you were doing there at scale.
Yeah. And so just recently I had a conversation with the mom, and this just like broke my heart, who they were told by their physician that that the child should not have any uh, flour, no flour foods, like no foods with any flour. Like that's really limiting, like extremely limiting. And the kid's 11 years old, barely understands the stuff. Yes, he's extremely overweight. And so I'm having this conversation with the mom, and of course that allows a little flex, like it allows like a very strict no, 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 you can't have this. So it sort of makes things easier. But at the end, like the kid's 11 years old, he's not going to be able to sustain that. Plus, he's so overweight, he's getting bullied by kids at school, and his coping mechanism is eating.
Mm,
And so you take all of that and you put this extreme restriction on a child who doesn't really understand why in the grand scheme. And the second day at school that he was restricted to a salad with chicken on it, he paid his friend $5 to eat his hamburger.
mm, mm,
So what are we doing here, folks? Like there's so much more to nutrition than here's a diet, follow this.
mm.
Here's some information, follow these things. nutrition and emotions and mindset and as you grow up are so related that if you don't take time to understand where someone's coming from, you can't help them make a better decision later. You just can't.
Mhm. So, I mean, I think on that phrase of being, building the mindset, you had an opportunity to do, a bodybuilding competition one time. So I want you to kind of talk about like the mindset going into that. Because I mean, obviously there's working out, then there's bodybuilding, which is a completely different monster, completely different nutrition level. So I want you to kind of talk about like why did you get into that? And obviously to this point, I think you're still very toned. You still have the detail. So like, how are you maintaining that?
Great question. So when I graduated from my undergrad, I decided to pursue personal training because that's what you do after you get your college degree. You go into personal training. I moved to Florida, and in that Florida space in Orlando, there was a lot of bodybuilding going on. So it was just around me a lot. And so after I was in that kind of circle, I realized how important nutrition played a role in their success. And so I went back to school, got my master's, and fast forward, here we are. But when I was in the second year of my master's, I decided to do a bodybuilding competition. I was like, why not? I had the resources, I had the information, I had the education. So I did do that. It is hard. It's extremely hard. In fact, it took me 5 months to get on stage, and even when I was on stage, I probably could have been a lot leaner. But it was my first time, and I was doing it for the experience. I was like, check a box. I did this. This was great. But it's very difficult. It is a day in, day out. You really got to be on it with everything. And mind you, this is before iPhones, before everything. So everything was on paper. There was no MyFitnessPal helping you out or anything like that. So it was hard, but it gave me something to focus on. I was in school, and while that was fine, my dad was sick, so it gave me another outlet to just like focus my energy on. I learned a ton, but it's unsustainable. 100% unsustainable. I looked phenomenal when I was done, but very quickly after that, I put most of the weight back on, honestly, and then some, actually. It's super restrictive, very hard on, I mean, it's a physical, you're being judged on how you look explicitly. Exactly how you look is what you're being judged on. And there is no ins, ands, or buts. It's like that is, you're being judged by your shape, your figure, your tone, all of that stuff. And it's hard. It's hard on the brain, it's hard on your psyche. Um, and I think the reason I got out of it alive is because I did it for fun. I wasn't in it to like really win it. I was like, I'm doing this because I want to be able to walk out on stage, look like I belong there, and check a box to say I did this and I have that experience. So for those that do it full time, my heart goes out to them because it is very difficult.
So, I mean, obviously, with all these ups and downs, right? I mean, you're talking about essentially in different time periods, jumping into bodybuilding. You're also talking about dealing with kids to a level to where you probably bring some of that mental baggage home, considering that you probably see kids that have passed away, but at the same time, you probably see adults that are going to pass away because they're not taking care of themselves, which leads me to a date. And I want to say the date. It's May 11th, 2013. What does that mean to you when it resonates when you think about that date?
My my wedding date.
Correct. So I want you to kind of talk about your other half. Like, how has Greg been a supporting system for this? Because again, there's a lot of different pushes and pulls. You're dealing with people's personalities. You're dealing with people being overwhelmed, people that are getting results, people that are not getting results. And then you come home to Greg. What does that look like?
So Greg is a wonderfully understanding human. And when I met him originally in 2003. We could reconnect in 2009. But in 2009, I was at the heaviest I'd been in a long time. So when we reconnected, I was like 30 some odd pounds heavier, and he thought I was just as beautiful as the day he met me 6 years prior to that. So he's always been a champion for me and how I look and how I work and how I affect other people and my passion for this business. Um, but when it comes to like all the things I go through on a regular basis, talking with people, dealing with their emotions, dealing with their concerns and issues, he's really good at helping me refocus. It's almost like, and I think I do it too, because I don't need to relive their concerns and issues and emotions. I need to be myself with my husband. I don't know. There are some days that are harder than others, but truly, every person I work with is individual, and I have to, I work with this person for an hour, then I work with this person for an hour, and everybody's different. And I can take one conversation, another conversation, or I can say, this is this person, this is their, compartmentalize their session with me. And then I go into another session. Like, this is their session. I'm compartmentalizing their session. So even when I hang out with my husband, I'm hanging out with him. And this is different state of mind, state of being. For people passing away, I think that's a little bit different, of course, but thankfully, I don't see that very often in my field, trying to prevent most of that. But I don't know why or how, but I have found it fairly easy to compartmentalize where I need to be, what I need to do, and how I need to be in different situations. And he helps me with that too.
So would you say, again, kind of doing my due diligence, I think you guys have a really decent lake life, right? You guys like going to the lake, you like riding on the boat. So I want you to kind of talk, is that something of a passionate pastime for you to kind of help you woosah? Because I mean, every entrepreneur, they have something, whether it's rock climbing, whether it's going to the gun range, and it just seems for you guys, you like the outdoors. Is that not correct?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we don't have a boat, but we will certainly get on a boat or anyone else's boat any other time. We love the water. We love going to the beach for sure. We were married on St. Simon's Island. In fact, our wedding we got married at noon, had brunch right after, and we went to the beach with everybody and had a beach party because that's just how we roll. Kept it really simple. But yeah, we love going for hikes with our dog. We definitely love being outside as much as possible. And we'll take up any opportunity to do so.
So let's just talk about if you had an opportunity, right, to go back to, you said I think you were like plus 30 pounds, and in
Mhm.
that window when you were plus 30 pounds, if you can go back and talk to that version of yourself, what would you have a conversation with? I mean, what topic would you go over? Let's say you only have 30 minutes, and whatever you say in that conversation could help you become who you are a lot faster. What would you say?
It's stop wasting time doing things you don't like. There were so many things I would do that I didn't like. I would not eat certain foods. I mean, even after I became a registered dietitian, like the pinnacle of nutrition, right? I was still not eating pasta. I was like, I can't eat pasta because if I eat pasta, it's going to make me fat, which is complete nonsense. Nonsense. Can I swear? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean,
It's complete bullshit.
yeah.
It's not about the pasta. It's about how much pasta you're eating. What are you eating it with? What are you eating the rest of the day? It's calories in, calories out. However you want to get there, you can get there. There's ways of improving it, making it better. You can be more precise. And I think that's where, the lean, like losing weight and being lean are two totally different things in the sense of how you're choosing the foods you're choosing, but you can get both just by not eating more than you need.
Mhm. Hmm.
So don't do things you don't like.
Which kind of leads me into like, the gymaholic side of it. Because I mean, obviously it's either going to be genetic or you're working at it, right? Like, I mean, like your arms look like you could put someone in a chokehold and put them to sleep in like 15 seconds. So I want you to talk about, like, for your arms to get that tone, is it more so genetic or is it more so that you train on that particular muscle group?
I think it's both, honestly. I wish my abs look like my arms. How's that? I mean, you can't have everything most of the time. There are beautiful, genetically amazing people out there that are just seemingly carefree and can look amazing. But honestly, even when I was the leanest I've ever been in my entire life and walked on a stage, my abs still did not reflect as much work as I had done. It's just an area of my body that is just never going to be as lean as I want it to be, and I have to come to grips with that. What am I going to do? I could get surgery, but I'm not going to do that. And it's a choice, right? So I'm thankful that my arms are more toned than other areas of my body. It is a blessing because that is easier to show off than your abs anyway. But you got to work for it too. They don't just show up.
Mm.
You have to work hard. And I think the gymaholic piece of it is I'm so addicted to understanding how active I've been over time, because that activity over time is how you keep the things that you are working so hard for. You don't work out twice a week and think, well, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna look, That's not what bodybuilders do. That's not what people who you may aspire to look like do. People work every day on their health and fitness, and it depends on your goals of what you want to achieve in that physicality. But if you're not working towards it, if you're not lifting weights, you're not going to see those beautiful muscles underneath, the adipose tissue that we want to lose. You're not going to see any of that. But how much you see, I do think a lot of genetics plays a role.
So let's just spin off of that. I mean, I think that was like a motivational speech coming from you. Now I want you to kind of refine and tone that to a listener that's listening, right? And potentially they want to work with you, but right now they may be 20, 30 pounds overweight like you were at one time. They're an executive, they work for a company, they have kids, they go home, they do all these different things, and they can't really find the time to tune into the right diet or into the right workout routine. What words of wisdom would you have for someone like that?
I want to ask them why they want it in the first place.
Mm,
I mean, why, if you have a desire for something, you have to really dig in to that why. Because when things get hard, when things get tough, when things become overwhelming, it's really easy to drop anything extra in your life, right? I mean, I don't have children, but most people that I work with do have children, and they're extremely important to them, obviously. And when they say they want to do things for their children, I mean, I think that's a great reason, but it has to be even bigger than that. It has to be so deep rooted. And so I've heard this before on many occasions, but asking yourself why you want to do something at least 5 times before you even start is a great way to understand the deeper connection to why you want to do something, because it's the reason why you get out of bed to go work out or you don't. That's the reason why you choose maybe a little bit less alcohol one day than another day. It's why you choose to go through the drive-through or go to the grocery store and get food that you know is going to make you healthier, fitter, better, longer. It's not perfect, but it's the thing that keeps you going, because there's always something that's going to get in your way. Always. There's something that's going to put a roadblock in front of you. You're going to have a stressful day. You're going to want to cope with it in some particular way that probably isn't going to be helping you towards your goals. You're going to want to sleep in. You're going to want, it's cold outside. You don't want to go outside. And you have to know why it's important to you to continue to do the things that you know are going to move you forward. And if you don't have that why first, then it's probably not going to last very long.
All right. So let's say the next step. So they heard what you said and they're listening to you and they want to get in contact with you. They're powered up. They're ready to get started. That they're saying like you're the person for them to motivate them. How do they contact you? Where do you want to send them?
The best place to contact me is by booking a call with me. Honestly, I will talk to anyone and everyone about what they have going on. And they may find that I'm not a good fit for them, because I'm not a good fit for everybody. You have to want to work when you're working with me. You have to want to achieve the goals, and you don't have to be perfect. I do not expect perfection. What I expect is that you take it seriously and that you understand there is a level of commitment and involvement that you have to be willing to do. And it is, I can't do it for you.
Mm,
I can't pick the foods for you. In fact, I don't tell people what to eat. People are surprised by that. I do not do meal plans. I
mm.
do not need meal plans because I don't know what you want to eat next week, tomorrow, in an hour from now. I have no idea. You have to know, but we can work together to figure out how to learn how to make those decisions better and more workable for you. It's you. I want to empower you. Hence the empower nutrition. I want
Mhm.
to empower you to be able to make those decisions so that you don't need me forever. You can do this forever. So I would say book a call with me. Let's chat about your situation, where you're at, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and why you want to accomplish it. And I work with folks one on one, but I also work with the bigger gym populations out there that are having a hard time with their members and their clients, or small business facilities that have employees that are really trying to increase the health benefits for their staff. And so I'm happy to help in those ways too. But let's book a call. Let's talk. Let's chat.
So I mean, what you're doing, I mean, obviously it's sustainable, right? You've been doing it for long enough to where you probably do it to your last day. Where ideally do you see what you're doing with your business, maybe 5, 10 years down the road from now?
That's a great question. in I would say that my biggest goal is to help the masses. I want to be able to help as many people as possible. And I think everyone is capable of achieving a sustainable, healthy lifestyle if they want it.
Mhm.
That is truly my vision. And I think if I can find the means and the methodology to create a platform that allows that to be done easier, more in a bigger scope, not such a granular scope, that would be fantastic. Like perhaps it's the thing that that gyms use because it's it's the resource for nutrition, and that's it.
Mm. I think that's definitely interesting. So, I mean, obviously, you done a lot of learning. You learn good based upon you have a nutrition background, nutrition degree. Are there any books that you would like to recommend for an entrepreneur that kind of leads into entrepreneurism, but at the same time talks about nutrition or talks about healthy living?
There, so entrepreneur sake, I mean, it's funny. Like I tie things into entrepreneurship all the time, but there's a couple books out there that I think are pretty stellar, and they actually talk about more of the movement piece of it. So there's a book called Built to Move, uh, by Kelly Starrett and his wife, and it is by they're two physical therapists that talk about mobility and the basics of mobility and how important it is to be physically active the majority of the day as much as possible to be functional. So there's an old man test. If you've ever never heard of it, it's when you're putting your shoes on. So you put your shoes on the ground and your socks on the ground and you stand on one foot. You heard of this? You
Yeah.
stand on one foot, you pick up the shoe or the sock, you put that on and you put your shoe on. You all this by standing on one foot, not touching anything. And if you can't do it, that's okay. You just count how many times you've had to touch something and try to get better at that. But that kind of the balance, the functionality, all of those things are things you can do all day long and practice very easily. And it gives you a sense of like a base of where you're at so that as you get older, that you can maintain that or at least improve upon it so that you're not going the other way. So Built to Move is a really good one. Burn by Henry Poncer is also phenomenal. It is actually it it's a little bit I don't know, not super high level, but a little bit higher level. He's an anthropologist who studied a tribe in Africa called the Hudsu tribe. And he wanted to know whether or not probably the last version of hunter gatherers out there, if they were burning more calories per day than the average American, because you would think that they would because they're so active. They're always doing something all day. They don't sit around and watch TV ever. And I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but it's an excellent book to really weed out the whole version of I can outwork my diet. You can't. That particular spoiler I will put out there. You cannot outwork your diet. You just can't. It's impossible to do that for the rest of your life. Maybe for a period of time, but not forever, for a period of time. And so those two things I think are really, really important. There is a book by Alan Aragon. I forget the name of it, but I think it's Flexible Dieting. Honestly, I think that's what it's called, Flexible Dieting by Aaron Aragon. I am working through that book right now, and it's actually really great.
So, I mean, obviously, you're well read, right? I mean, you're studious to the topic of matter. Have you thought about, or are you in the work of process of writing your own book currently?
I would love to, absolutely love to. I keep, it's funny. I think about the title of the book more than anything else.
Mhm.
Sometimes I want to call it like the no bullshit diet or the most boring diet on the planet.
Mhm.
I don't know, but yes, I would absolutely love to do that. And it's something that I've thought about a lot.
Got it. Yeah, I would think. I mean, based upon the target demographic that you're looking at, I think that'll definitely be fruitful. So, the sooner you get to it, the better. I'm pushing you
I
a little
hear
nudge.
that.
Yeah, I'm pushing a little nudge a little bit. So, I think one of the things that you said over and over again was equality, equilibrium, balance, or pretty much the keywords that you utilize. So even with physical fitness and entrepreneurism, behind the scenes is always in today's world some kind of technology that supports that. So what tech or software or technology that you use on a day-to-day basis that you would not be able to manage your clients or do what you do at scale if you didn't have access to it?
Oh, I love data. I love technology. It's been such a godsend. So for me, I use a lot of like I use a fitness tracker. I use an Apple Watch. You can use whatever you want, but I think it is so telling of your actions and how balanced you are with your fitness and with your movement, because that is something that most people don't pay enough attention to. That and like MyFitnessPal, like tracking your food. People hate tracking their food, and I don't know why. I like it's not that hard, first of all. And it gives you so much information to say, like, okay, I'm eating this. It has this many calories. How many more calories do I have for the rest of the day? And then when you track that information with the amount of activity you have and you look at the results on the scale, I mean, it seems pretty logical that if you're eating too much, your weight is not going down. And
Yeah.
if you're eating not eating a little bit less, the weight will go down. It all works. But the unawareness that we have, the lack of awareness is just so insane to me. We want to ignore, and we don't want to hurt our little ego about, oh, well, I ate a little bit more, but it wasn't that bad.
Mm,
Everyone says, oh, my diet's not that bad. What does that even mean?
mm,
Put it on paper, put it down. Let me see those numbers. Let me see what we're looking at. What can we change? What can we alter? What can we keep? All the things.
mm.
But the data tracking, the fitness tracking, putting it all together in a spreadsheet, those are my like everything's. Um, yeah, that I love it. I love looking at all those numbers.
So, I mean, I think that that becomes a little bit of a difficult. I mean, play devil's advocate, right? So, let's say
Sure.
if there's a regular person, and let's say they got roast chicken, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and maybe some snow peas, right? And without them actually, let's say they got fresh items. When you buy fresh items along those lines, there's no real calorie counter per se without like Googling it or putting everything in a blender, blend it together, and then sampling the mix that comes out of it. So how does someone then like figure out the calories if they're going more of the natural route to where they can't really figure out the calories per item?
Without using like a MyFitness, like in a food tracking app.
Yeah, correct. Let's say if it's lunchtime and I know I want to get something that's to say under 500 calories for lunch, and I'm going into the grocery and I want to pick up like salad items, I want to make everything fresh. Right then in that moment, like I'm like prime example, if I go to the frozen food section, the calories are there. If I go to the ready-made food, calories are there. But if I go to like the regular produce, there's no calories. So how does someone kind of juggle that if they're quick on their feet?
Well, produce aside, so if we're talking fruits and vegetables, I don't think you need to worry about the calories in those as much, because the reality of you eating so many more calories than you need from produce is so unlikely. I mean, if you take, so 400 grams of watermelon is roughly like 90 calories, 100 calories or something like that, maybe a little more. But that same amount of chips is astronomical. It's like 500 calories. So when it comes to that, thinking about the protein, produce, carb thing, if you're not looking at calories, you're not looking at numbers, then you're not looking at numbers. You can't like just pretend you know how many calories you're eating because you eat chicken and you ate this. But what you can do is create a portion control and a methodology of like, not eating a extra large portion or a volume size. So you can focus on those things. But if you're not looking at calories, then you can't expect to know calories. I would say that becomes like too confusing and annoying. I would focus on one or the other. If you don't want to count calories, fine, but find a system routine. And again, PPC all day, protein, produce, carb. If you can do that, you're setting yourself up with a freedom because you're choosing what types of those things you want. You're getting balance, but you're also setting up a bit of a boundary that you're not over consuming things. You're not choosing things that are going to offset that balance too much. So it's like the easiest, simplest, like step in the, toe in the water kind of way to balance that out and figure yourself out.
Very cool. So, like, let's just do a hypothetical, right? If you had an opportunity to sit down with anyone for 24 hours, it could be someone that you've met, someone that you've never met, someone that died 300 years ago, or someone that is alive to now that you're willing to meet, someone that you look up to. Who would that person be, and what would you talk about?
It would be Sarah Blakely, and I would talk about all the things that she did to get. I mean, I've read her books. I think she is impressive. And I follow her on Instagram too. And then yesterday she posted this video about all of her notebooks. And if she has like hundreds of notebooks with all of her ideas and all of her things and all of the thoughts that she's had over the years, I do the exact same thing. I have notebooks on note. I have like 20 notebooks in here just full of stuff. And I don't actually, I have not kept all of them. Wish I had, and I will from now on. But I think she is brilliant. I love her message, her humanitarianism. She is just authentic, real, no bullshit. I think she is tremendous, and I would love to pick her brain.
So let's flip this on someone that, like, let's say your dad. Let's say if you had an opportunity to sit down with your dad again and talk about your greatest achievements that you've made to date, what would those achievements look like in that conversation?
Well, I mean, I believe I'm the first person to get master's degree in our family. But talking to him about, I would just love to know what was going on in his brain when he was deciding to do one company versus another company, or this job or that job. And the man worked hard. He worked you the man always worked as hard as he possibly could. He took jobs that were not ideal. I mean, towards the end of his life, he worked in the kitchen at one of the grocery stores just to put food on the table. I mean, he was not someone who was afraid of hard work. But I'm always so curious about why he did what he did. Like, why did you choose that particular business? Or why do you think your bar went under? I mean, things I could never even fathom or understand when I was younger. No idea. I'm just helping my dad clean out the beer chute at the bar because he's giving me money, or sweeping the parking lot. No idea why he chose the routes that he chose. But that is something that I certainly could probably learn a lot from. And I think sharing my experiences as far as my success of this business, as far as it's been so far and where it's going to go, and being able to have the business and a job and keep it going. And now I'm just going to excel even more at this. I mean, my successes are still coming.
Mhm.
So,
So it kind of leads me to talk about your mother-in-law had made a funny comment. I think it was a picture. It was your dog. I think maybe Buddy the cat and another cat was on the bed, and she was just like her grand pets or whatever. So I want you to kind of talk about that. I mean, obviously you just talked about your dad and you're the legacy of him. Where do you see, or where would you ideally want your legacy to go with what you're doing right now?
oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't have kids. I chose not to have kids. That is something that I've, it's never been a personal goal of mine. And I don't know. I mean, I have some nieces that I don't have a very close relationship right now with. They live up in New York, so it's a little bit distance wise, it's difficult. But uh, I hope to get closer with them. I hope to touch as many hearts and souls as I can through this job. I mean, the more the merrier, the more people that I can impact and help get freedom from food and fitness and make it their own. That's the goal. As many people as possible. I want people to feel like they have the choice, the freedom, the empowerment to do what they want to do, because I felt so closed in all the time
Mhm.
that anyone I can help with that, it would be a blessing. And hopefully they'll carry on. So maybe that's, someone coming under me in this business and helping carry on that torch. We'll see.
So I mean, with that, I mean, you brought up your nieces. I think Eleanor is one of your niece, right? So let's say if you could kind of leave a closing message to her to let her know that what you're doing right now could then motivate her and inspire her down the road, what would that look like for her?
Well, I know that she's close to my heart because she's a swimmer. And I used to be a swimmer. She is phenomenal at swimming. She is almost never loses a race. And recently I heard that she came in like fifth, which was devastating to her. It wasn't even last. It was just she wasn't first or second.
Mhm.
And she got really upset about it. And I was like, that's a fighter right there. That's a fighter. That is true to my heart. Like, you want it so bad and you're not going to quit, and you're upset because you didn't get where you wanted to go, and you're going to keep fighting. I know that this this business, this journey that I'm in is kind of like that. I'm not where I want to be, but I know I'm going to get where I want to go because I'm a fighter myself. So whatever she does and chooses to do growing up and what career path she wants to go on, I know that she's going to be ultimately successful because she has that fighting spirit, just like her aunt.
Wow. Wow. Definitely powerful. So going into closing of Boston Cage, traditionally I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of Boston Cage. So now Boston Cage is your show, and I'm your guest. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask me?
Oh man, essay. Whew. So in all that you do,
Mhm.
what would you say is your favorite part of podcasting? What piece of the puzzle do you like the most?
I think it's what I've grown into loving the most, and it inspires me is to do the research. It's really to sit down and to dig into someone's history and be able to articulate that in the conversation. And again, it's not more so like the playful surprises that I see on someone's face, but it's more so to let them know that I respect them and I know what they're going through and obviously that they're inspiration. So I want people to kind of understand the hurdles, the obstacles, the twists and turns, the family, all the little details that a regular podcast that you may not have that opportunity to get out on a business podcast. And I want to make sure I can fulfill that for them.
I mean, you certainly pulled out some things that I was not expecting today. So you definitely fulfilled that for me. What would you like to see Boston Cage do the next 5 years?
So in the next 5 years of Boston Cage, I mean, like really recently in like the past, say 6 months, I really sat down and kind of decided to scale it up. I mean, podcasting is definitely great. YouTube videos are definitely great, but in the orchestration of 8 billion people on a scale of the world, yes, I can get to a lot of those people, but what would it look like if I had a TV channel? What would it look like if I had a magazine? What would it look like if I have an internet radio? What would it look like if I have kids' books? And just kind of build it into a media empire to where there's so many different tentacles that are all underneath that one brand that at the end of the day, when I'm dead and gone, it'll be an opportunity for at least a larger part of the population to have access to the content that I've been developing for this period of time.
That is phenomenal. That is insanely phenomenal. And I think you were probably closer to that than you think.
One day at a time. I mean, I'm kind of going back to my personality trait. I'm a quick starter, and I also kind of deliver on those quick starts. So I come up with ideas and I try to execute them as fast as possible. And you can ask my team, like I probably drive them completely batshit crazy because I'm always like at 12 o'clock at night, I'm sending them a random message. Okay, hey, we should do this. And don't forget that where are we with this other project? And I'm always kind of following up and I'm always adding new things to the list. But the goal would be, there's only one thing to do, and that's just to do it. I mean, time is short. And considering that I've faced death before, I don't know when my time is going to be up. So I have to execute as much as I possibly can with the time that I have.
I mean, I stand by that. I mean, the whole "there's no greater harm than that" a wasted time is written on my forearm here.
Yeah.
That in Norwegian or well, Viking old ruins. So all to my heritage, cannot waste time. It's the only thing we don't get back. So awesome.
100% fact. It's 100% we don't get it back. So, I mean, with that, do you have any other questions?
Oh, I mean, I could pick your brain all day, but I think, it'd be interesting to see your. All right. No, actually, I have another question. Who is someone that you would be in like over the moon to get on your podcast that you have not had in your podcast yet?
So I've been kind of holding back on the famous individuals because like once you kind of step into the limelight of fame, like things start to change and multiply really fast. So I wanted to kind of establish where I'm at, but I think I'm at that point now to where the systems are in place and I could handle it. And I'm thinking like the ideal person for me, considering we grew up in the same environment, we speak the same language, and to see him go from just being an artist to being a billionaire, I would say Jay-Z, pound for pound.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Cool. Well, let me know when that comes out.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an opportunity for it to happen. I mean, it just kind of like it's probably more so my decision than anything else because it'd just be a matter of me starting to reach out to the bigger names versus having people being delivered to me. So it's a matter of hitting that switch and start seeking it out. What I've learned about strategy and business is if you put your mind to it and then you start to do it, then you'll definitely achieve it. It's just a matter of time.
Well, then I'm putting I'm getting on you then. You get me on by the book and I'll get on you about getting Jay-Z on.
Yep. Yep. So anyone that's listening that potentially knows Jay-Z or knows someone that Jay-Z, just let them know that I got a red dot on them. I'm coming to get them sooner or later. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. That's awesome.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, obviously, calling you like the Gymaholic boss is just kind of like a fraction of who you are. I think obviously you're an empowerment boss, you're a nutrition boss, like you're a spirited like person that kind of gives like innovation, but at the same time inspiration. So I definitely appreciate you bringing the value that you brought to our podcast today, and I look forward to following you and watching you grow.
Thanks so much. I had amazing time talking with you today and sharing my story, my space, and I can't wait to see where I go and to see and follow you where you go.
Great, great. With that, SA Grant, over and out.